Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going, and as I like to remind you each and every day, it expands our base. One of the favorite books in my library is a book called Never Again by Herbert Parmet and Marie Hecht. The book is about the 1940 presidential campaign, which pitted Franklin Roosevelt against Wendell Willkie. In the introduction to the book, the authors write the following. The presidential election in the United States is an American entertainment with serious overtones that takes place every 4 years. It is a familiar phenomenon to the natives, but can be disturbing to those who have not yet been bred to it. An emigre whose first experience with an election occurred in 1940 said, "It was very frightening to watch you. The name-calling and the vituperation seemed so serious." I want to point out to you that what we are witnessing now is not unusual in American politics. Not at all. And yet, there is a dimension this year that is profoundly disturbing, which I want to talk about. Let's begin with a congressman by the name of Clay Higgins, a Republican from Louisiana, who posted on his website the fact, well, as he puts it, that Haitians practice voodoo and that they eat cats and dogs, reinforcing all the racist, negative, inaccurate stereotypes that we have confronted in the last week, thanks to the rhetoric of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. It is important to note that he took the website comment down only after Republican congressional colleagues asked him to pray about it, and that includes the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Johnson. The Republican Party should have immediately condemned what Mr. Higgins said. The Republican Party should have been as unambiguous as former President George H.W. Bush was on the question of David Duke when Duke ran for governor of Louisiana and said, "We have no room in the Republican Party for racism." And yet, Speaker Johnson seems more concerned about holding on to power. The Republicans seem more concerned with holding on to their slim majority in the House of Representatives than in doing the right thing. This is very disturbing to those of us who have worked over the years in American politics. For someone like me who was a Republican and who now hears this kind of rhetorical activity and the deafening silence of the Republican Party when it comes to condemning a representative in the House of Representatives, Clay Higgins, Republican of Louisiana. Something is seriously wrong with what is happening in the Republican Party. And Speaker Johnson should stand up and be clear that there is no room in the Republican Party for racism. There is no room in the Republican Party for a member of Congress who would stand and make the kind of comments that Representative Higgins has made. This, my friends, is, to me, yet another indication of the decline of the Republican Party. And let me give you another example. The ambassador of Ukraine to the United States visited an arms plant in Pennsylvania. And the reaction of Speaker Johnson was his demand that the ambassador from the Ukraine be fired. That's right, be fired. This is unbelievable. Not only that, you have the presidential candidate of the Republican Party and the former president of the United States indicating his concern about Zelensky and Ukraine, and the vice presidential nominee, Mr. Vance, indicating he would never vote for aid to Ukraine. Do you understand? And I make this point emphatically. This is a decisive moment for the Republican Party. not to repudiate racism from its own ranks, not to support the freedom fighters in the Ukraine from their own ranks, to have their candidate for president and their vice president both say that they're not sure about aid to Ukraine. And by the way, Zelensky will not meet with Trump on this trip. Another indication of the concerns we should all have. And then there is the case of Donald Trump on Iran, saying very clearly that he would crush Iran to smithereens if Iran continues on its current trajectory, including threats against Donald Trump. He is saying that he would use all the power of the presidency of the United States to crush to smithereens Iran. Now, look, I'm no friend of Iran in terms of its current leadership. I'm very concerned about the nuclear threat. I'm very concerned about the fact that Iran supplies Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, the radical Islamists in the Middle East. The tensions are rising because of Iran. But when a candidate for president of the United States, a man who was president of the United States, talks about crushing them, reducing them to smithereens, I think we need to take note of what Donald Trump is saying. By the way, the latest analysis of his economic plan says that were it to be implemented, it would be a disaster for the United States of America. Now, I do not approach these comments lightly. It is not that I want to come on the air every day and bash Donald Trump. Quite the contrary. I would rather see a Republican Party that is constructive and a candidate for president who is serious. And by the way, Mr. Smith will, later today, unveil the case against Donald Trump. And he is doing it at the behest of the concerns about the testimony, particularly of former Vice President Mike Pence, clearly a grave indictment of his former leader, and also of the former Chief of Staff of the White House, Mark Meadows. The question is, can those two individuals whose testimony has been so critical play a role in what we now see as the unfolding drama of the criminality of Donald Trump on January 6th? There is yet one more thing that I want to mention. An interview that Mitt Romney just gave to his biographer. Mitt Romney was the Republican nominee for President of the United States, as all of you remember, in 2012. Mitt Romney comes from a distinguished Republican Party family, including his father, the late George Romney, who was governor of Michigan. Mitt Romney is now afraid that if Donald Trump wins, there will be retribution against his family. Did you hear me? Retribution against his family. And may I say, he spoke about his children and his grandchildren. And what would happen if Donald Trump were elected president on the kind of retribution they might suffer because their name is Romney. Am I being crystal clear? What Donald Trump has wrought is a danger to American democracy. It is a danger to all of us. And clearly, Donald Trump is laying the groundwork that if he were to lose the election, he will challenge the election. He will challenge its legitimacy. And across this country, Republicans are trying to subvert the election process. This is not a time for silence. This is a time for all Americans, Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, to speak out loudly and clearly. This is, in a way, the darkest day I have ever seen in terms of my involvement in American politics. And one more thing I must say, and that has to do with the pending indictment of the mayor of New York. That's something for another day, another subject, another discussion. But there is something seriously wrong, and the American people and the Republican Party have to wake up and deal with it. Don't you agree? Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague. I want to point out you can interact with me on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and I love your comments. And let me also say, as I always do, a special thanks to Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this program. And now to all of you, we sit back and we wait to see what news will break today. But I promise you this, I will be back tomorrow with another episode, if you will, of Around the Political World with John Rothman. Thanks for tuning in. See you then.